It's a pleasure to be here today, and hopefully this will give you guys some interesting tidbits so that you can use, some information that you can apply, and at the very least, just get you thinking about how to adapt, how to move, and to change. One of the biggest things in today's crazy world is the whole concept of adapting. We're constantly seeing so many things happening, and it really is so important for us to be able to take a step back and realize that we're not just out of control. There's actually a lot that we can do within these circumstances. So today, Tim's already told you all about me. The one thing I would want to say is, having traveled all around the world, one of the things that you never advertise on your resume and you always leave out of all the stories is the hardships that come with it. When you just become director and you find yourself moving to another country and dropping 2-3 levels and having to take whatever job you can get just to survive in this new city, in this new country, on this new continent, and then slowly having to work your way back up again. Finding out that different cultures do things differently, being completely offensive when you just say things that you've been saying your whole life because the culture is different. So having moved around, I've had to learn to really adapt to not just the work environment, but the actual living environment and the people that you interact with in and outside of the office. So I'm going to cover today a lot about skills and opportunities that you would not normally have thought of before, and really highlight that there are some alternative opportunities for people that you might not have considered in the past. So why do we change careers? Now, it's interesting that out of the top reasons why people choose to change careers, money and promotion is the lowest one on the list. Lack of opportunity, horrible bosses, really pushing too hard, not maintaining that work-life balance, and actually just putting too much into your job, leading to burnout, stress, non-stop stress. A lot of positions are associated with very high stress levels, a lot of pressure, constant, and a very dangerous reason. And stressful jobs, unfortunately, is one of those reasons where when you retire from one of those positions, leads to the highest number of heart attacks, because your body is used to being under so much stress, and then it's just gone, and it just all of a sudden relaxes. And if you don't have a plan for what comes next, it is a bit of a challenge. So something that is very serious, toxic workplaces, company culture. If you get up in the office in the mornings and you dread going into the office, it is one of those things that you can only do so long before you just go, nope, this is not worth it. Some more exciting thing, life changes, new babies, moving to countries for a spouse or a partner, deciding to make a change. And then boredom. It's incredible how many people actually leave a position because they get bored. Relocation to new countries, new opportunities is always a fun one. And then one that I believe is sometimes kind of looked at as a selfish motivation, but money and promotion are very often seen as, oh yeah, he's skipping from one company to another just to get a better salary or to get that promotion he wanted. But unfortunately, the industry is very much designed around that whole mechanism. If you join one of the big companies, KPMG, Deloitte, about 1% of their partners has moved their way up through that exact same organization. Most of them, 99% of them, have jumped from one to the other every time a little step higher. They might have ending up in the same company they started at, but without moving around, they don't move up as fast. So those are the things that we all kind of are aware of. But then the unplanned pieces, right? When it's not your choice, when you don't have a say in the change that is thrusted upon you and you now have to work with. Being fired, sometimes you're fired for, now on this call, I doubt there's many people that have been fired for truly malicious stuff, but sometimes you get fired for reasons. I remember one of my first jobs, actually my very first job, I very almost got fired because I was on duty over the weekend and we had a major crash in one of our servers and I had to get everything back up, but I didn't have the tools. And I used my personal software to actually fix the problem, get it all back up and running. And I thought, man, this was a great thing. I saved the company millions of dollars. My boss will be so impressed. And I got the biggest chewing out of my career that Monday morning when I was told that I contravened all kinds of company policies and really stepped way over the line of legalities with software licensing and this, that, and the other. But it taught me an extremely valuable lesson. It wasn't malicious in any sense, but sometimes we make mistakes and it does have consequences. And when that happens, it's important to learn from it and move on. I got lucky that time, but I know of a lot of people that weren't lucky when they do something they shouldn't do, and it really impacts their life in a crazy thing. I think just about anybody that's been in the industry for any amount of time are aware of cutbacks, redundancies, the economy going up and down, having to try and create some cost savings within the organization. And then, of course, mergers and acquisition. Most recently, Husky Synovus, the big merger, 3 big cycles of redundancies that came out of there. And then just plain everyday restructuring. Shell does this every single year, and every 2 or 3 years, you've got to reapply for your same job. Restructuring within an organization to drive efficiencies very often is just a pain in the butt for the guy on the ground that has to reapply for his own jobs. And then the one that I still very often struggle with is when a company changes, maybe a new CEO, maybe a new chair of the board, and the company strategy changes, and you don't even know about it. And all of a sudden, there's all kinds of changes within the organization, and all of a sudden, the area that you were really trying to build up are now no longer relevant and unfortunately needs to be cut back. Those ones are always tough because you could be the best person in your area of expertise, yet you get cut back because what you do isn't aligned with where the company wants to go. And that one is sometimes very, very difficult. But when we look at why these things happen, if it's politics, economics, world events, I mean, COVID has changed how we work in no small way. But when these things happen, we very seldom have control over it. It very seldom is predictable. Sometimes you can see it coming a little bit. You kind of hope it doesn't happen, but when it does, you kind of go, yeah, I should have seen that. But most of the time, we don't really have control over it. And we very seldom get a heads up that says, listen, in 2 years, you've got to be ready to move positions and move forward. So life just never wants to let up, right? And that's kind of what makes it also a little bit more interesting. Just doing what you do and then being surprised. If you like surprises, there's always lots of that in our careers. And I'm not one for big surprises, but in my career, I've learned to really adapt to it and move on. So now you're sitting without a job. You're in an economy that is struggling. There's all kinds of changes in legislation around energy. And all of a sudden, you find yourself looking for a job and just not getting it. So what do you do? Now, most of us have got very detailed career and professional development plans. We've got our career mapped out. We know where we want to go, how to get there. We maintain our resume. Every time we we do something new at the office that's really mentionable. We update our resume, we update our LinkedIn. We spend at least 2 to 5 hours a week networking, building connections, really getting to know the industry that you want to work in, getting to know the network that you rely on within a town or a technology or an industry. And then obviously continue education, learning more and more about what you need to do your job better, how to achieve that next step. But the reality is most of us are too busy with our jobs to actually be doing all of this all the time. So when it comes to the point where you now have to start looking for that job, very often some of that you have done helps, but it very often leaves you in a position where all of a sudden now you do have time and you're forced to update it, get your career plan back on track, update your resume, connect with your network, connect to all of the employment agencies and see what's going on, what kind of positions are out there. Maybe do that certification that you've been putting off for a little bit. So it really is something that you all of a sudden now have to jump on. And if you're looking, this is a great thing to do. And if you're not, if you're busy with a job, if you're quite happy where you are right now, I would seriously recommend put some effort into a career and personal development plan. If you have questions about that, let me know. But it truly is worth it to actually see really what you need to do to work to that next level and to stay ahead of the pack. So definitely something to help you think about. Now, one of the things that is important to understand when you find yourself without a job and you've been literally struggling for 6 months, you've done maybe 10, 20 interviews, nothing is landing, the type of positions that you want to apply for just isn't coming up, and you start feeling really down, you've got to take a step back and just breathe. Watch a few YouTube clips of motivation. There's some amazing guys that have lost their legs, born without legs, or got blown up, and they find a way to get back and give back and do more. Some inspirational videos really help you just get over yourself and keep getting up in the morning to keep pushing forward. And just to realize that there might be a really good reason why you find yourself in that position. Maybe you've been becoming a little bit lethargic and you've kind of let slip some of your personal development goals. Maybe this is the greatest opportunity of your life, and it makes you look around to realize that, oh, this position was really just a stepping stone to get to these other opportunities. Or maybe that you realize that this is maybe the scariest thing, but by the time you're through it, you realize this is the best thing that ever happened to you. Now you find yourself, in my case, in Calgary. I'm always in the mountains, having fun either on horseback or in the snow, beautiful people around you, and you just can't believe how lucky you are. But when you look back at that whole journey of getting there, there were some dodgy areas that you had to get through and some really scary situations that you had to navigate to actually get to where you end up. So it is really important to really look at why you find yourself in that position, but more importantly, what are you going to do about it and where are you going to go? So when you find yourself in that, oh my word, I'm lost, I have no idea what I'm going to do, the world is ending kind of situation, what are the opportunities? Now, I think this is why you guys are here today, to really dig into some opportunities here for us to really understand what can you do differently. Everybody knows you can go and apply for a job that you're currently doing. It's pretty straightforward. You apply for them, you go for the interviews, you get the job, and you move forward. But when that's not working, some of the things that you can do: start a company. Now, if you've got a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit and you've had some experience with consulting, or you've had some experience building products, all of a sudden you've found yourself with time and the opportunity to actually change it up, throw caution to the wind. You've got enough savings to keep you going for a year, and you want to take a chance and really push the boundaries a little bit. Starting a company, great idea. COVID hits, and oh my word, you're stuck at home, you can't go out, you can't network. What do? Quite a few of my friends ended up in England specifically, going and doing their MBAs full-time for a year. One, it's much easier, you do it remotely. Two, it's basically lost time that you can't really do much with, so apply it to the best, get that extra certification. But what we've seen much more aggressively happening this last year is less people are looking to move up into people management, into more of that executive levels. More of those executive levels are looking at doing more technical research. So a lot of people are doing coding programs. A lot of people are learning about analytics, BI, and even machine learning and some of the AI capabilities, just to gain a better understanding of this future that is coming and preparing themselves for roles that might come up. But here's the things that I think people don't often think about enough. And I'm going to give you guys a lot of examples, hopefully, and throw questions in there. We're going to have a little bit more interactive pieces once I'm done with these. So Tim will collect all of those questions for you, and we'll get into those in a second. But one of the first things people don't realize is if you've had a career of 10, 15 years, you have the option to look at a few alternatives. You might not have realized it. You kept doing your job because it pays the bills, but you weren't really happy about it. And all of a sudden you're looking and realizing, oh man, I've got an opportunity here to actually do something different. And all of a sudden you realize, well, I've been a BA, but that role that I want to apply for, that's more of a PM kind of role. What you don't realize is as a BA, you're part of a project team, you're part of a scrum, you're part of a team that develops these things. And how often do you have to step up and cover for things, take your own responsibility on things, manage your own time? People don't realize how many of the skills that you pick up within a specific area is transferable, and how you could rebrand yourself when you apply for a new position. So instead of, you don't have to change where you worked, what you did, your job descriptions, but when you tell the story, you just focus on different kind of points, different experiences, different skills that might have not been your primary, but your secondary, which still is a lot of experience. So having the opportunity to rebrand, definitely something that people don't always consider enough. Industry change. You've been an engineer in asset management, and 20 years later, you find yourself looking for an opportunity, and all of a sudden, all of the energy companies in the province is cutting back, slowing down, joining each other, merging, redundancies. So where do you find a job? Well, you've got a magnitude of skills that is required for so many other jobs. And at school, it's always easy for us to rely on the teacher to tell us, oh, well, this skill gives you options to A, B, and C. But as adults, we've got to do that grunt work. We've got to go and look at, okay, what are my skills? What can I do? Put them all down, and then going and look, okay, what kind of jobs, what kind of industries can I apply this to? What can I do with all of my engineering knowledge? Well, engineering's got a lot of math, physics, machine learning. Oh, wow, look at this. Almost 80% of what these guys do are the same. All I need to do is learn how to code. R, Python. Oh, look at that. That's stuff I did at university. I'm not unfamiliar with that. So let's get into that. So looking at changing from one industry to the next, changing from one job type to another, there's a lot of opportunities we don't always think about. And we're always a little bit scared, but I can tell you confidence is so much more important. 90% of companies don't hire the skill, they hire the right person for any job that has some real longevity to it anyway. If it's just a contract and you need that specific skill, technology change is the other thing that you can consider. So when you've been using Tableau forever, you've been using Spotfire, you've done all of this reporting analytics, you've worked with data your whole career, and all of a sudden the industry changes, Microsoft releases this new product, and everybody's jumping on the Power Platform because Power BI can do everything that Tableau can do, and now it can do a lot of the data wrangling. And with Power Automate and Power Apps, you can actually get into product development and automation. And they try and sell you this future, and companies are buying it. And all of a sudden, you need to apply for a job, which you can do quite happily. But instead of using Tableau, you've got to use Power BI. Or instead of using Spotfire, you've got to use Tableau. Instead of using R, you've got to use Python. It's one of those things where with very little effort, you can learn enough to get through the interviews and then keep learning so that when you start, you actually hit the ground running and then learn on the job. Your experience will give you such an advantage over anybody else that tries to do that, that it really becomes something that is an option. And if it doesn't work, that's why almost every permanent role has got a 3-month probation period to really see, is this job what you want? Is the company right for you? Companies will tell you it so that they can see if you're right for them. But in reality, I think people forget it is really for you to see if you're happy with the position that you're in. So a lot of opportunities and change in there. And then we get to the really scary part. What are we going to do if we want to do something really different? So taking that leap, really changing how we look at the world, and applying for positions that scares the crap out of us, or to start that company that you have no idea of how to do, or to really go above and beyond in finding an opportunity that you know has to be out there, you just can't seem to find it right now. And taking that leap, I always laugh, taking the leap is really hard unless you're being chased by something really scary. Then it all of a sudden becomes really easy. I had this thing about height, so I started doing cliff diving and some of the less smart things in my youth. And when you stand there and you wait, it's really tough to take that step and jump. But if your buddy's chasing you with a nice big stick, I promise you, it is a whole lot easier to get off that cliff. And that's exactly what you find yourself in this situation. You've got nothing to lose. You're already feeling down and stressed. And what are you going to do next? Taking that leap is kind of one of the most exhilarating things that you can do. So how do we make this practical? You've got a skill set and you can apply to different industries. We talked a little bit about that. You're an engineer, but that doesn't mean that you have to work in oil and gas. You've worked in oil and gas your whole life, but oil and gas is all about taking a natural resource, converting it into a product, and then using that product to create energy. And with the migration to clean energy and to green energy, that same processes still apply. Most of the technologies, and when I say technologies, I'm talking data technologies, mathematically based components, your processes are all basically the same. So when you choose to look at other industries outside of your comfort zone, all of a sudden you might start to see that there are different opportunities. Modeling, machine learning, having been building these analytical models using Python, learning R is not that hard. It's a little bit more based towards the statistical, but other than that, learning a new programming language, if you already know one, it's the old saying, right? If you can speak one language, it's easier to learn two. When you can speak two languages, it's much easier to learn a third, and so on. But it really becomes important for you to start applying your skills. You've learned how to really visualize information and apply it. Apply it in a different technology, just pick it up. And then a lot of things that a lot of people don't start thinking about is all of that knowledge that you gained, what's missing? Maybe a short course on Coursera. You can do it in a week, 2 weeks, and you can fill that gap. You've been working with SaaS all your life, and SaaS has got all of these tools built in, but it kind of forces you into this certain way of working. Now you want to start doing some more analytical work in Python or wherever, but you're just missing some of those experiences. Do a quick short course. If education's not necessarily, if you don't learn well sitting behind a computer falling asleep like I do, volunteer. Data for Good. There's a great opportunity for you to join an organization, get together with like-minded people and learn from them real-time, interactively, seeing how people are leveraging those skills and applying it. So there's other ways of learning. And then one of the things that we do a lot is we partner people up. And when you're looking and you're young, straight out of university, you can code like a crazy person, but you don't have that process knowledge, all of that experience. Find one of the guys that's been around for 25 years or that's retired and bored and is looking for a few things to keep them busy. Partner up with them. Leverage their capabilities to give your coding meaning, or lend your coding to their experience to solve real business problems, real world problems. Come up with problems of your own or go online. There are so many opportunities to do. And then when you start doing that, you start learning from each other and you can leverage each other's skills to really do that. And then, of course, you can get really crazy and start thinking outside of the box. I've used this example before, and I know a lot of you on this call actually have heard this before. But when you are a biomechanical nano engineer and your focus on building viruses that react in certain ways to temperatures and light and to acidity, and you're testing all of these nanobots out, in that process, you learn so much about the human body, the human immune system, because you've got to get around that immune system if you want to achieve what you're trying to build there. But when you're learning all about the immune system, the last thing you're thinking about is risk models for a bank. But if you take the knowledge that you've got of the human immune system and you apply it to a problem like fraud, all of a sudden you're able to build a risk model or a fraud detection model that is based on technology that nobody else has done before. And by leveraging your experience and knowledge, you can build a model which detects risks or detects fraud or penetrations that nobody else can detect, because most of the detection systems out there is based on something that's happened before and they've learned how to recognize it. But what if it's never happened before? Then you've got to fail first before you now start looking for it. With an immune system, you don't need to do that. Your immune system doesn't have to know every single pathogen before it reacts. If it sees something that it thinks, nah, this is not supposed to be here, it reacts. Same thing in a bank system. if they see something that is not supposed to happen. I got one of my cards canceled this week. Apparently, I bought 3,000 Gucci bags in Mexico. Now, one, I would never buy a Gucci bag in Mexico, but the bank system immediately picked that up because it was strange for me in so many ways. So immediately you can leverage that skill. But the first thing people think about is, well, I know nothing about machine learning. I don't know how to code. I don't know how to work in fintech. I don't know anything about finance or fraud detection, underwriting. But you don't need to. You have a skill that can solve a problem. What you need is somebody that can code, or somebody that have that experience with fintech, somebody that can take your piece of capability, your experience, combine it with their ability to code or build those models, and all of a sudden you solve a problem that can become very, very lucrative. So that's one of the crazy examples of how you can really cross not just industries, technology, how you can cross whole approaches, job descriptions. It's something that really is so far outside of what you've learned your whole life. All of a sudden, it can be applied and made into a product that's valuable somewhere else. So what other ways are there of thinking outside of the box? On this call, I don't know if you guys have looked at who else is on this call. I would recommend whenever you join a conference, whenever you join a meetup, have a look at your co-attendees. See who is on there. See what skills they have. Look at what they actually bring, what brings them here. Why are they attending the same event as you are? Find that common connector and see what skills are you missing. Are there opportunities for us to collaborate? I've been doing a lot of virtual conferences over the last year, and one of the easiest ways to meet people and learn is just to talk to them and see if there's an opportunity. If there's no opportunity, it's a nice chat and you move on with your life. But if there is an opportunity, you have the ability to really step into that exciting next phase of your life. The other thing that people don't always think about is, how do I actually do this? I'm stuck at home, I'm isolated, I don't know what to do next, I don't have that teacher telling me anymore. So how do I get into this? One of the simplest ways, TikTok. It's one of the most horrible things about machine learning right now in social media is that it constantly pushes you towards your predisposed shortcomings. If you're really stuck on cats, the more cats you watch, the more cats it shows you. So that built-in bias that you don't even are aware of, whenever you go on social media, it will perpetuate that bias for you. If you're liberal, it will push you more that way. If you're conservative, the opposite. And one of the things you could use that for is create an account, go in and start looking for crazy opportunities, open job sites, how to leap into action, how to start searching and looking for some really crazy things. And the more you do that, the more deeper and deeper you'll go into that world of out of the box thinking. And it will really open up a ton of opportunities. There's an AI platform that you can sign up for that creates lunches. So business lunch. Nobody goes to the office, nobody goes for business lunches at the moment. So how do you do that? Well, what's beautiful about the COVID situation is it's turned this whole planet into one big digital village. And you've now got the opportunity to go for lunches with anybody, anywhere in the world. And all you have to do is sign up and set up an opportunity to, and all of a sudden you can meet these people. And you talk to somebody down in Boston. When was it? 3 weeks ago, I was talking to this professor down in Boston, and he's got this very big problem with one of his students' projects that they just can't figure out. And it happened that I was talking to a different person the previous work and could connect them. A week later, I speak to somebody who connected me with a guy out in New York who got one of my problems solved. And by just spending an hour a week on a virtual lunch with strangers you don't know from Adam or Eve, and just learning from them and seeing if there's opportunities, I would say 8 out of 10, it's just a nice chat and you maybe learn something, maybe you don't. But 2 of those out of every 10 really made valuable connections. So it's really something where you could really explode into that. Let's poke around, see if you guys are actually still listening. If anybody is currently looking for a position, what would be the perfect, or even if you're not looking, I won't tell if you won't, but what is the perfect job description that you're looking for? And what skill do you think, just 2 words, the job, or a few words, job description and the top skill you think you need for that job. If you can throw that into the chat, and let's see if we can get into that. One of the other things that we take for granted, I know a lot of people are busy with their master's degrees, their PhDs. I see one of our attendees is working on their thesis. When you're working on your thesis, you're very focused on that research and getting that done. But when you start thinking about, okay, what are you going to do with that afterwards? I know time is little, so you don't always have time, but when you finish it, it definitely is worth taking a look at what's happened in the industry since you started. For a year, 2 years, you've been head down in the books, doing your research, really focusing, and all of a sudden now you're done. And how do you apply it? You realize that the industries have changed. The skill that you've learned is now already being applied and absorbed into no-code programs where people that know much less than you do can do, or they think they can do the same, right? Machine learning platforms where pretty much uneducated professionals, in the sense that they're not mathematical geniuses, they're just accountants, engineers, and when I say just, they're amazing accountants and engineers. And by leveraging some of these platforms, they can do almost the same as you can do. And it sometimes gets to be a bit of a pain, right? So what makes you different? Don't forget about all the pieces, all the journey that you went through with your thesis, the scientific method, the applying, the coming up with those hypotheses and testing it. One of the quotes that I saw on the reel just before the meeting started was that there's no real experiment that fails as long as you come up with real data. So learning how to come up with the hypotheses, test it out, prove it right or wrong. It's like the old saying, I never found out, or it's not the old saying, it's a quote from one of the old guys. I never found, well, it took me 1,000 times to find out how not to make a light bulb before I figured out how to make a light bulb. And I guess you all can figure out who said that, but it's important to keep going and to learn the process rather than just the outcome. It's the same reason at school we're told to show our work rather than just write down the answer, because very often it is the journey that really gets you there, not just how to get there. So data strategy, data whisperer, pulling value from data. Some of the things that people are talking about, jobs that they want. Now, data, there was another quote actually on the reel. I don't know if you guys noticed the quote where data is like a bikini, or what's it, information or statistics is like a bikini. The the areas that it highlights is nice, but it's the areas that it hides that are really crucial. And data is such a amazing thing. You can really use it to warp reality completely. I mean, if you look at media right now, depending on which channels or what social media or who you follow, the same event can be spun into incredibly opposing opinions. It really is incredible to see how data has become the new sword. It is something that you can use to really influence. You can use data to do so much. But in order to do that, you have to, I love that quote, Tim. If you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. It is so important to know that it is our responsibility to really bring the truth to the front and to expose what is intended. Now, the problem with that, we've done a lot of research, and I'll talk a little bit about my company in a bit, but we've been doing a lot of research about how to morally, ethically, legally use information. How do you actually apply information and make it available? So just making the facts available sounds really good, but the problem is not everybody in the world has the same frame of reference. Not everybody in the same has the same ability to interrogate data and to understand what it means. So you have to kind of tell a story with it. And it really is tough to really shape data into a story without introducing bias. Because the moment you tell a story using data, you're building that story based out of your own experience, your own frame of reference. And as much as you think this is fact, the moment it's a story, it is no longer fact. And the true raw data, the facts, are now being represented in a story that could be understood, but could also be challenged. So it is a bit of a challenge when we look at becoming a data whisperer and really digging deep into what the data means. And it becomes a very big philosophical conversation, normally over a lot of wine, when you start really trying to get to the crux of what is the real situation here. And very often, it doesn't matter. It is a lot about perception. But to become a really good data whisperer, there's two main high-level things that is extremely important. One, you need to understand data and how to manipulate it, how to connect it, how to get it together, how to see the hidden messages in there, or the trends, the correlations, the causality, which is not easy. It's a whole industry on its own. But if you want to become a true data whisperer, you've also got to understand the business side. You've got to understand the human side. Who is this being presented to? How do they respond? Anything from as simple to creating a visualization that is accessible by colorblind people, to really telling a story in social engineering where you morph that story, that data, into something that really drives a stake through somebody's heart, and it just makes them feel that this is what needs to happen, where you actually get to the point where it becomes emotional for them. And that part of the data story is the piece that most of the guys that's good on the data side is not that good with all of that soft skills, the social engineering side. So data whispering, really tough, very, very difficult to successfully bridge that gap. But start on one side, learn everything you can about data, and then at some point you're going to realize that there's only so much you can learn about raw data. Your focus is going to start shifting more to your audience and the delivery mechanisms that you're going to start using to get that message across. In terms of data strategy, that one is much, sometimes simpler, sometimes harder. In my mind, it's much simpler. as long as you're up to date with the latest technology, you'll be great for companies that actually are looking like startups, the guys that uses the latest technologies. And you'll really suck at more traditionally 60-year-old oil and gas companies, because a lot of what you do on the front end of technology really is completely irrelevant for people on the back end. So strategy, the biggest thing about data strategy and critical thinking is very important if you in an innovative environment, if you get to make change, if you have to really solve specific problems, where data strategy in a more traditional lagging organization is more about cost saving, optimization, traditional old school, basic data management 101, data governance eventually. If you can get to that maturity level 3 where you start introducing self-service reporting and that kind of stuff, you've done amazingly. So strategy, the biggest secret about that is take your environment into consideration, look at what is possible within the organization. Don't try and reach too far, oversell, push the boundaries too much, because some of the more traditional companies just isn't going to keep up with you, and you're gonna find yourself isolated and out of that arena altogether. So those are the two very specific areas. Now, I don't know how many of you guys are actually into machine learning or into AI, but if you're into data at all, getting into machine learning has now become super easy. It is truly the easiest switch to AI and machine learning from data, because so much of it is based on data. Now, when you talk about AI and machine learning, there's all kinds of definitions, and you can go into whole 6-month courses on it. But if you break it down in two types, one is your true math quantum physicist geeks that build the actual machine learning algorithms. And then there's the guys that apply it. The guys that build products using these very smart guys' back-end modules. GPT-3 is an awesome example where that can be used as a text engine to do amazing things. And you don't actually need to know anything about machine learning to use it. You need to know about business and process and product development. So getting that in there is really easy. And if you understand the data sets that you're working with, you can very sorry, Tim's distracting me with funny comments, but you can very easily build products leveraging your knowledge of data without having to rely on deep ML logic. All you need to know is the same way that you use Excel or Power BI or Tableau to actually create reports and analysis of data. You just take that next step further, and self-service machine learning. Something like BrainToy is a great Calgary-based company, brilliant platform. You need to know very little of machine learning, and what you do need to know, they can teach you very quickly, and you can leverage that to build products and really accelerate how you move forward. It really is interesting to see that when you start playing with those kind of things and leveraging the historical skills that you've built up, it really is easy to move into the next generation of product development. And it's incredible how little skill you need to actually take an idea to a proof of concept kind of level and sell it. There's so many opportunities out there. So we've got about 6 minutes left, I think, here. I can't believe I've talked that much. There's not been many questions in there yet, but maybe a question for the group again. What is the most crazy idea that you have that you don't think is actually executable? You can make it anonymous if you want, or throw it in there. But if there's an idea that is so crazy, you just think nobody's ever going to do that, throw it in the question box there, and let's see what we can do, come up with. Okay, using the tools is easy. What about ethics and the understanding of bias? So maybe a good opportunity to just talk a little bit about augmented humanity. We're busy doing a lot of research in human interface or human computer interfaces, and unlike a lot of the research that's happening on the interaction with human behavior, we're specifically focusing on the movement of data. So if you can move data from one point to another, what are the implications? What is possible? What isn't possible? So if I can take knowledge and move it from one point to another, I don't know anybody's seen Matrix where Neo turns around and go, I know Kung Fu. Being able to upload knowledge is one of the areas we're looking at a lot. But more importantly for us is the ethical component and the bias component of that, where computers are pretty straightforward. If you write a program, you know if it will accept the program or not. It will just not run, or it will run. Or if you're in the old days, before a lot of the safeguards was built in, you could write programs that can make the computer blow up, overheat, all that kind of stuff. And that's the piece that we're looking at the moment is what kind of information should you not upload into the brain? What information will literally melt your brain? And it comes down a lot to your own frame of reference and what you believe yourself to be, and that image of self. If you see yourself as a really good person and you upload the knowledge of some really horrible stuff, it could very much create a break in reality for that person. So there are some really big ethical, moral, and legal issues surrounding that. So it's going to be many, many years before that kind of stuff is actually being looked at, or applied. But the same way that when we figured out how to make fire, I can bet you those first few people probably burned down a few fields when they figured out how to start fires. And a few thousand years later, we still don't have a complete hold on it. And since then, we figured out how to split the atom and create bombs. We've now figured out with artificial intelligence how to do way more powerful things. And like fire, it can be used for incredibly good things, but if we don't start thinking about how to protect us against it soon, we're going to have to really, really rethink what kind of future we're letting ourselves into. Because if we don't start building those safeguards now, we will find ourselves in an environment where instead of unlimited energy, we end up with just another atom bomb blowing ourselves up. So much deeper conversation about ethics and bias that we can get into. Retaining regaining employment after 13 years hiatus. It's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. I had a situation. I'm going to explain, give you a quick sentence about two of my friends. My one friend took 6 months off to spend some time and grow his family, grow the family, and really just invest in his home life. And another friend went and focused on time management skills, really understanding difficult communication patterns and getting to the crux of what is really needed. How to prioritize and really focus on what is the most important, because there's only so much time and you can't multitask. And when you listen to those two people, you would think that, well, one of them really didn't do much to grow their career and the other one really did. And it might come as a shock to you that the one that I just described of all those business skills was my friend who had a baby. Maternity leave. She all of a sudden had to figure out how to balance all of the no sleep with everything that needed to be done at home. She had to figure out what this freaking new little baby wanted with no communication skills, screaming for all kinds of funny reasons, figuring out what the real problem was, and realizing that she had to prioritize. Certain things just had to wait. Sometimes you have to go out with blouse with puke on it, because that happens. But what people forget is those skills are transferable to any office environment. I know many bosses who are no different than a baby. You've got to decipher something crazy to figure out what they really want, or they throw so much at you and you've got to prioritize how to get that done. So don't think that by being away from a 9-to-5 office job took you out of the learning thing. So my last slide here, a growth mindset. When you're constantly changing, there is no, it's almost impossible for an individual to not change, despite how anti-change humans are. We are constantly learning by just interacting. You know the story, you cannot look at the future, because the moment you interact with the future, you change the future. So even by looking at it, you're changing it, and therefore it's impossible to look at it. And it's actually very true with knowledge. Just by living, by getting up every morning, we learn so much every day. We just need to open our minds to what is around us and really absorb all of that experience around us and apply it, figure out a way to use it. Don't just see it as an annoyance when somebody cuts you off on the road. I mean, all you're doing is trying to get from one place to another, but use it as an opportunity to grow. Use it to learn constraint, maybe compassion. Think about, well, maybe somebody's in trouble. Maybe somebody's having a baby. So using every single experience that you go through as a learning experience, that growth mindset, extremely important. We already talked about getting your career paths, your resumes. Network like a lion. It is extremely important to learn how to focus and not to waste time. So you'll see on the savannah, lions will lie around and there'll be deer running past all the time. And then all of a sudden it will jump up and grab one of them. It's not because it didn't want any of the others. It was just, they didn't really, the chances of it being successful was too low, or they were too young, or whatever. There's always a reason why you put effort into something. And there's a very important around prioritizing it, because you can't get to everywhere. And that's a whole, you can get more into that. Growth mindsets, I do have a few things that I can throw your way. Troy, if you want to reach out, I'll send that information for you later. And Chris, bicycles is like motorbikes, right? If you're out there, everybody is out to kill you. And if you ride with that mindset, I can guarantee you it will be good. But it's also a great skill if you want to become a trader, because if you're in the financial industries on the trading floor, it's exactly the same skill set. So definitely think about that. And I think that's all the time we've got today. I've gone a little bit over. But if you've got any questions, or if you want to talk about anything specific, reach out to me. My contact details is in the presentation. And the presentation will be going out to everybody after this after this presentation by Tim.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Mervin. Really appreciate the time you spent. I do have a question for you. Maybe if you can take this. So even at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about that there's a talent war that's happening in Calgary right now, which really is suggesting that Calgary is becoming a bit of a technology hub or hotspot. And so many in the Untapped Energy community are in various stages of upskilling or pivoting. So what would you recommend as an area of focus? And I'll just take it from your title, data, analytics, AI, which of these might you recommend? And how does this fit into a career and development plan?
I would say start with what you've got. Start always from an area of strength. So if you've already got data experience, or if you've already got AI experience, look at the other component. Bringing those two together is extremely important. If you really are a double PhD, a really smart quantum physicist, go deep into a very narrow focus within AI. If you're a accountant, a engineer, somebody that has a lot of work experience, understands data a little bit, understands math a little bit, get into data, understand analytics a lot better, and then get into machine learning. Not building analytical models, but leveraging them to build products or to solve business problems. And there's a ton of opportunities there. SAIT is about to launch I think they're launching in September, a great applied AI for leaders. And most of the course is actually applied AI. It's a beginner's course that really gets you to a point where it doesn't matter your background or skill, but being able to leverage machine learning to draw that next level. If you can use Excel, you can do this course, and then you can expand your skill set from Excel into a self-serve machine learning platform. And there'll be some of the strategies, data strategy, AI strategy, culture, bias, all of that is covered as well. But definitely look at that. And looking at Calgary, network. Calgary is one of those cities where, since I've moved here, unless you've played golf with somebody, gone to the Stampede with them, it's really tough to trust. But once they do, they will go out of their way to support you and help you. So there's a lot of opportunities in Calgary. You just need to be a little bit more creative in how you network. Events like this, I believe there's another event for data. There's another group in Calgary, data mostly SQL based, next week. So that will definitely come out. And I think that's next week. Attendees, get into Data for Good. There's great opportunities in Calgary, and that networking will really connect you with where you can go and what's to come. Some big changes for Calgary. Infosys is opening a massive office here. They're basically the Indian version of Google. Their products aren't as great yet, but their consulting arm is incredible, and they've got amazing opportunities coming to Calgary. So if you want to be one of the 200 people they hired to get started, definitely look at their website. There's a great opportunity there. Anything else? Being successful first 30, 60, 90 days in a new database role at a new industry. Yes. Definitely, Jag. The first 30 days, all you have to do is learn. You don't have to really deliver much in the first 30 days. In the first 30 days, meet with everybody. Meet with the business, the data guys, the analysts guys. Find out what the problems is. Ask a million questions. Just see. Build yourself a little network diagram of who's who in the zoo in the company. Learn what their focus is. Do a network analysis on who in the organization lends this way, that way, who works well together, who hates each other. Get to know your environment. It is the #1 survival trait for any new opportunity, is get to know your environment. And then in the 60 days, build a plan. Make sure that you articulate it well, that you understand where you're going to go, and start showing some quick, easy wins. The 60 days, 90 days delivery are very seldom the most important pieces that you deliver, but it is the ones that you can turn around the fastest, the ones that you can really show value for the organization. That's definitely the areas that you want to focus on. And then 90 days plus, that's where you really start focusing on foundational delivery and really start building improvements within the processes over and above just the delivery that you're that you're trying to get to. As long as you come up with real data. So